What's up, friends? Welcome to The Beautiful Mess, where we talk about tools and tactics to improve your life. This week, we're diving into beauty and does it matter in this fast-paced culture that we live in? It's tough to say because do we even have time to appreciate beauty, and is it still relevant? I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but in an age of TikTok and 30-second, 60-second things, do we still appreciate beauty? And I mean that seriously, because I feel like we're drifting away from the traditional sense of beauty and what that means to our culture. There was a Facebook post from Good People News. Not really familiar with the page, but I believe this story is true. Basically, it talks about in Washington, D.C., at a metro station on a cold January morning in 2007, a man with a violin played 6 Bach pieces for about 45 minutes. During that time, approximately 2,000 people went through the station, most of them on their way to work. After about 4 minutes, a middle-aged man noticed that there was a musician playing. He slowed his pace and stopped for a few seconds. Then he hurried on to meet his schedule. And it goes on to talk about other instances of, people stopping, and, there was an example of a 3-year-old boy who stopped and noticed, but his mom kind of tugged him along and, hurried along. And so it's just so interesting. And at the end, looks like he might have made, a handful of dollars or something. And this is like a professional musician, Joshua Bell. And so he was there playing what's said to be a $3.5 million violin. And people were just going about their day. This is music that people would pay probably a significant amount to go see in a crowded auditorium. And in the context, I guess that's maybe the thing. It's like, if we're not in the context, like, can you still appreciate the beauty before you? It's so interesting that, people just couldn't stop in their busy day. You think about like a subway or a metro station like this, and like people don't have the time. They're living to a clock, and it can be a problem in our society to live to a clock where what you do is dictated by what the clock tells you to do. I'm actually, this is probably a topic for another episode, but I am really fascinated by the 40-hour work week and how that's like a new development. We did not, develop as a society around, this 40-hour work week. Traditionally speaking, farming, obviously that could go beyond probably the 40 hours, but there were also times where there were downtimes, and there were a lot more, I would say, communal things happening. But the 40-hour work week, I think, is very fascinating. And so we end up, not finding times of leisure, true leisure to appreciate beauty and goodness. I think probably the closest that people get on a regular basis is going out and seeing a beautiful, they go on a hike, they go visit some beautiful state park or something. But I think we need to, step back and make time. I think it's that important that you need to make time for leisure. There's a book that I was required to read for school called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. And basically, people, like, the society starts breaking down once you kind of take away the culture of a society, the things that it's built around, like art. And, once you kind of take away art, what's left? Like once it's just, you're kind of like a machine. You become a machine trying to fulfill, a quota. Like you're just looking to fulfill, just like these different measures. And I think art is what adds depth to our lives, and it allows us to appreciate, the significance of our lives. Just being able to come in contact with something that's outside of the normal, outside of the day to day. And so I would encourage you. This is a beautiful mess where we talk about tools and tactics. So, one thing that I think you should adapt in your life is making time for true leisure. What do I mean by that? Think about, you don't necessarily have to, go out and book a, fancy concert or whatever, but even just setting aside time where you just listen to music, good, wholesome music. I like pop music. I like all kinds of music, but like maybe branch out a little bit, listen to some jazz, listen to some classical music, listen to some soundtrack. I'm a big fan of soundtrack music, by the way. I believe that the progression of music, at least classical music, has spilled into film music. I think Wagner was kind of that bridge into film music. And so it's really fascinating to see the progression of art and how that made it into our modern society. I think there's fantastic YouTube artists even. And so like, I do think that there's examples of good art happening, but it's also on the part of the listener to kind of make space. It's kind of like that context idea. Like this professional musician is in the middle of a subway and nobody's paying attention, like hardly any. I think there were just a few people that really paid attention, but the rest, like they couldn't spend the, 45 minutes to listen to this person play, this professional musician, and appreciate the work of art. And, there's that saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And to that, I say yes and no, because I believe that there's an objective beauty and a subjective element, because obviously, what's beautiful to one culture, when you grow up in a certain culture where you expect certain kinds of music, might not be readily palatable to someone from another culture. For example, in medieval times, there were certain intervals or intervals that were considered demonic. Even it was hilarious. Just back then, like they considered these dissonant intervals, the tritone, I think it was even maybe like a minor third or something. It was just like insane what they thought was like this like dissonant, and like so it wouldn't be used that often. But obviously now we've expanded our palette. But I think at the same time, after studying music and understanding the science behind music, it's really fascinating that the hierarchy of tonality is actually based in nature, like the way that frequencies react to each other, and they create tones, support the traditional tonal system, your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do kind of stuff, in your keys and stuff. It's really interesting. So I do believe that when we completely disregard like traditional history, art without a good reason, it can be a little bit dangerous, because all of a sudden we're just disregarding the past for something completely new. I'm a big fan of new things, and I actually find it fascinating listening to modern music more from just an idea of it than the actual music itself. I think atonal music isn't really that beautiful. And I mean, there's a way of like looking at it that it's beautiful, but more theoretical than to my ears, I would say. So yeah, make time, make space that you can enjoy good art. Maybe go to a museum. Go look at, a beautiful sunset. It doesn't have to be complex, but like create that space in your environment so that you allow yourself the time and come into contact with new ideas. Maybe it's reading a book that isn't your normal, like, I don't know, science fiction or whatever, I mean, maybe you want to read science fiction. Maybe that's where you're going to find your leisure. But I think it's important to kind of break away from the day-to-day so that you can realize the vastness and the significance of life. And the next time you hear someone playing in the subway with a $3.5 million violin, take the time to listen and appreciate the beauty around you. And I think the moral of the story of finding beauty is that we don't need to rush through life necessarily. I think taking a step back on a weekly basis, maybe monthly, and maybe a little bit of a longer period, like maybe you break it up so that like once a week you have kind of like a mini exposure to leisure, and then quarterly you might have even longer. Maybe you take a day even and just set that day aside to like truly appreciate works of art. Because, it's so easy to just go along with this idea that we're busy. Like busy is the new normal. How are you doing? I'm busy. Yeah. But is that a good busy or a bad busy? I think I would rather live a full and fulfilling life than a busy life, because a busy life makes it feel like I'm doing a lot of stuff that's not important. That, at least to me, that's the way busy sounds. I think you want to be busy, get busy with the good stuff. I think that goes back to like finding your passions, things that you're truly like, you're passionate about it, you're excited about it. Find those things. And I would suggest finding a hobby that you're super passionate about, that like is kind of along the lines of this leisure idea. That way you can devote time to it just because that's what you do. I know a lot of people that, play an instrument. Maybe they are in a choir, an orchestra. They like to draw. They like to paint. I think it's important to realize the value of original art and local art too. Like, support your local artists. Find ways to get involved in art, because I think it's so important for our society. It's so important for our growth and development that it's, just highly recommend it. The other cool thing about something like music is it's like a good that everyone in the room can appreciate. It's a different good than, let's say, a piece of chocolate cake. If you have a piece of chocolate cake, only the person that eats that chocolate cake can appreciate it. Maybe someone can appreciate the beauty of the cake, but if they're not eating it, they're not appreciating the good of that chocolate cake. So the beauty about music and art is that many people can appreciate that work at the same time. And I think that's what unites us as humans, is like we have this common bond, this common experience of something that's kind of beyond the mundane day-to-day. So that's my recommendation to you, is find ways to incorporate beauty into the day-to-day of your life, whether that's listening to music, performing music, drawing, you name it, and maybe surround yourself with a community that supports you in that endeavor. Well, thanks so much, friends, for listening to this episode of The Beautiful Mess. If you want to join the Messy family, I highly encourage you to rate, review, subscribe, follow wherever you find us. We're at most of the social places, so let's connect. And would love to hear from you. DM me, message me, and let me know your thoughts on how you experience beauty in your day-to-day life. Where do you perform art? Can I listen to it? Can I see what you're working on? Because I always enjoy meeting another artist. So, and maybe you want to share that art or talk about it on the podcast. Let me know. Would love to hear from you. Well, thanks, friends, for listening in today. And until next time, my friends, stay messy.